The autumn wind whipped across the porch, but no one noticed. Donna kicked the screen door open, her boots striking the wood with a sharp, echoing thud. She slammed a crumpled flyer onto the table. It detailed a raid on a hidden cavern, promising a gemstone that granted an ultimate state of power. The requirement was 5 members. Vamp, Liberty Heart, and Cherryvale stood up before the paper had even settled. They moved with a singular, synchronized urgency. Within the hour, they tracked down Fern and Muggs. No words were exchanged. Fern looked at the flyer, then at the group, and nodded. Muggs grabbed his gear from the rack and stepped into the yard. The assembly of 6 turned toward the mountain pass. They marched in silence, the rhythm of their boots grinding against the gravel path. The air grew thinner and colder as the elevation climbed. Every step was deliberate, driven by the promise of the relic hidden in the stone. They did not stop for breath. They did not look back. The mountain loomed ahead, a jagged silhouette against the fading daylight, waiting to swallow them whole. The cavern entrance opened like a jagged wound in the mountainside. A dozen other adventurers already waited in the shadows, their forms indistinct in the gloom. Donya led the way, stepping over the threshold without a glance back. The group merged into the collective, a silent mass of bodies moving into the throat of the mountain. Outside, the wind had been sharp. Inside, the air was stagnant, heavy, with the smell of wet earth and ancient, undisturbed minerals. The tunnel narrowed quickly. The ceiling dropped until they were forced to stoop, their hands brushing against the slick, uneven rock of the walls. Water dripped rhythmically from hidden crevices, the sound echoing like a ticking clock in the cramped space. Ahead, the torchlight from the leading adventurers flickered, throwing long, distorted shadows that danced across the uneven floor. Every bootfall was muffled by the thick, damp grit underfoot. The path spiraled downward, deeper than any map had suggested. The group pressed forward, shoulder to shoulder, navigating the tight bends where the darkness felt almost solid. They moved into the heart of the mountain, where the air grew colder and the silence deeper, driven by the singular, quiet promise of the light waiting somewhere below. The tunnel floor suddenly groaned. It was not a sound of shifting gravel, but of tectonic plates grinding against one another. Donna stopped, her hand flying out to catch the wall, but the stone beneath her boots fractured. A jagged fissure raced through the center of the tunnel, splitting the path in two. The adventurers ahead scrambled backward as the earth heaved upward. Dust choked the air, thick and metallic, turning the torchlight into a hazy, suffocating glow. Then, the ceiling gave way. A massive form tore through the rock, blocking the exit and sealing the cavern. A roar erupted, so deep it vibrated through their chests and rattled teeth in their skulls. The behemoth rose from the darkness, limbs thick as tree trunks, eyes burning with a primal, predatory hunger. The group did not hesitate. The transition from silence to survival was instantaneous. Donna shouted a command that was lost in the cacophony of crumbling stone. Blades rasped against scabbards, iron singing as it was pulled into the dim light. They surged forward, a wave of steel charging directly into the shadow of the beast. The floor tilted, slick with debris, as they braced for the first impact. The hunt had transformed into a slaughter. Steel bit into hide, but the hide was thick as iron. The behemoth lashed out, its claws carving through the air. Muggs surged ahead to parry, but the creature's weight was absolute. A single sweeping blow caught him mid-stride. He flew backward, slamming against the stone wall before slumping, motionless, into the dust. The line broke. 2 others fell in quick succession, their bodies hitting the ground with sickening thuds. Donna ducked, rolled under a crushing limb, and drove her blade deep into the creature's flank. The beast shrieked, a sound that tore through the chamber. The battle dragged on, a grueling cycle of strikes and dodges. Sweat stung their eyes. Muscles burned with the effort of every swing. Finally, the beast stumbled. It clawed at the air, its movements slowing, before it crashed forward with an earth-shaking impact that sent ripples through the cavern floor. Silence rushed back into the room, heavy and absolute. In the center of the chamber, a light flickered into existence. A gemstone, pulsing with a steady, rhythmic glow, sat atop the cooling remains. The survivors stood over the carcass, chests heaving, eyes locked on the prize. They were bruised, bloodied, and trembling, the weight of the fallen heavy in the air. The light from the gemstone bled across the floor, washing out the shadows of the fallen. Donna took a step. The grit of the cavern ground crunched beneath her boots. She reached out, her fingers trembling, aiming for the core of the glow. At that exact second, a shadow blurred across her vision. Vamp lunged, his hand slamming into the same space. Their fingers collided, locking around the stone in a crushing grip. The air vanished. A sound like 1,000 glass shards shattering echoed through the chamber. A blinding white light erupted, pinning them against the stone floor before lifting them into the air. The energy surged through their veins like molten lead. They gasped, lungs burning as the static charge knit itself into their very skin. Their gear shifted, metal plates snapping and sliding into new, reinforced shapes that hummed with a low-frequency vibration. The cavern walls groaned as if reacting to a sudden shift in pressure. When the light finally bled away, the silence was absolute. They stood tall, the stone now fused into their palms, radiating a pulse that turned the cavern into a temple of light. They were no longer the scavengers who had entered the mountain. There was something else entirely, vibrating with a power that shook the very foundation of the earth.